Hello, I'm Doug DeWitt, Transfer Paper Product Manager here at Condé Systems. As you're well aware, Condé Systems carries a variety of different t-shirt transfer papers for color laser printers and color laser copiers. What you probably also understand is there are more color laser printers and copiers on the market than we could possibly test here at Condé. So in today's video, we're going to teach you how you can test t-shirt transfer paper in your own color laser printer or color laser copier. To demonstrate this, we've got two printers that I am not familiar with. We got a Ricoh Officio SPC 420 and we've got an Okidata C830. What we're going to do is use a procedure to see if we can get Neenah Technoprint 4.0 transfer paper to feed through these machines. Once you have the procedure down, you could do your own testing on our variety of t-shirt transfer papers in our product line. So let's go ahead and get started with this Ricoh Officio SPC 420 printer. Before we get started with our testing process, one thing that we need to understand is we have to determine what type of color laser printer or color laser copier we have. There are two major types of color laser printers in the market. Ones that are called legacy printers, which use an oil to help bond the toner to the page, and then newer models which are called LED or non-oil machines, which just use heat to bond the toner to the page. It's the type of printer that's going to determine which transfer paper you feed through your machine. If you don't know which type of printer you have, there are three basic questions that you can ask that will help point you to the answer. First question would be, do you have to order a component called fuser oil bottle or an oil coating roller for your printer? If you do, then you have an oil-based or legacy machine and you need to purchase the appropriate paper. Second question could be, does my printer print at 10 pages per minute or less? If your printer is slower than 10 pages per minute, odds are it is an oil-based machine and you need to get the appropriate paper. If it prints faster than 10 pages per minute, it's probably a non-oil device. The third question you can ask yourself is, how old is my machine? Odds are, if your machine is within 5 to 6 years of age, it is a non-oil printer and you could use a variety of different papers. If it's older than 5 or 6 years, then it might be an oil-based machine. If all else fails, you can always consult your owner's manual to find out what type of machine you have. But now that we've figured that out, let's go ahead and test Neenah Technoprint 4.0 paper through this Ricoh printer. The first thing we need to do is we need to identify the trays of our printer. In the front here, we have what's called our multi-purpose or bypass paper tray. Down below, we have our cassette tray. When it comes to running t-shirt transfer paper through your printer or copier, you never want to use the cassette tray. You always want to use the bypass or multi-purpose tray. Now, what we need to determine is which way does the paper load. Now that we've identified the bypass or multi-purpose tray, the next thing we need to determine is how the paper loads inside of the machine. If you have your owner's manual, you might want to consult your owner's manual to see how the paper loads in the machine. This is important because transfer paper has an emulsion layer side and a backing sheet side. We need to make sure we send the paper through on the proper side, otherwise we might possibly damage the printer. One thing you could look for are little stickers that indicate which way the paper loads, whether print side up or print side down. However, if you cannot determine from your owner's manual or from the printer itself which way the paper loads, here is a simple test that you can perform to determine it. Take a plain sheet of bond paper and draw an X on the paper with a Sharpie. The X is going to denote the backing sheet side of the print. At this point, we'll go ahead and load this sheet into our tray. So, if the image comes out on the side with the X, we need to know that the paper needs to be loaded print side down. If the image comes out on the opposite side of where we've drawn the X, then at that point we know the paper loads print side up. Let's go ahead and send this page through the printer to see what happens. Here we have our bond paper sheet with the X that we had written on the back to designate the backing sheet. We loaded it in with the X face up, or backing sheet side up. Since the printer imaged the opposite side, this lets us know that when it comes to loading paper inside of this printer from the bypass tray, we need to load the paper print side down or backing sheet side up. Now that we've determined that, let's move over to our computer so that we can show you which media weight selections you need to use first when testing transfer paper in your laser printer. Here at our computer, we're in our print preview screen in CorelDraw X5. We're getting ready to send this test file to the Ricoh printer to find out if we can run Neenah Technoprint 4.0 transfer paper through this printer. What I'm going to want to do is go into my print options and make sure that my Ricoh printer is selected as my designated printer. At that point, I want to go into the preferences because there are some changes I'm going to need to make in order to attempt to run this transfer paper. First thing we want to do is determine the paper size, whether we're running a letter sheet, which is 8.5 inches by 11 inches, or a tabloid sheet, which is 11 by 17. Next, I want to go down to the paper source and click on the drag down menu so I can make sure that we tell the printer that we are pulling paper from the bypass tray. The important selection here is the media. Notice it is on Auto Select. We have to understand that color laser printers and color laser copiers are defaulted to run in plain paper mode, but since we are running a coated paper, we need to select a different mode. My advice is we want to look for either a heavy stock, thick stock, or card stock setting and try that first. So we'll go into our pull down menu, and as you can see on this particular model, the first of those options that comes up is a thick stock option. This is what we want to try first. We'll go ahead and select thick stock option, save our changes, and now we'll test Technoprint 4.0 in thick stock 1 on the Ricoh Officio SPC 420 printer. Okay. The first sign of a good test is that the paper exits the machine. If the paper were to have jammed inside of the fuser section of this printer, we would definitely have to select a heavier media weight on our next attempt. Once the page comes out, we want to look at the overall print quality of the page. Do the colors look correct? Does our clip art image look like it should? Does our bitmap or photo image look like it should? And how is our gradients and halftones looking? Okay, at this point, it's really going to come down to preference. But the final test we need to do to this print is what I'm going to call the tissue test. And it's simply this. We take a white tissue and we trace the surface of the print with our tissue. What we're looking for is to see if any toner comes off on our tissue. If toner comes off on our tissue, that means the toner is not being properly bonded to the transfer paper. At that point, we would need to make the next heaviest setting in our media options and try another print. But if we have a good quality image and no toner comes off on our tissue, then we have the correct media weight for running this Technoprint 4.0 transfer paper through this particular printer. Use the same procedure to test other transfer papers through this printer. Now that we've showed you how to do it, we'll use another example with the Okidata C830 color laser printer. Now that we have our testing procedure down, let's go ahead and run through the same steps with this Okidata C830 color laser printer. Again, first thing we want to do is identify the multi-purpose or bypass tray from the cassette tray. On this unit, here is the multi-purpose tray. Here is the cassette tray down below. Again, we do not want to run transfer paper through the cassette tray. We only want to run transfer paper from the multi-purpose or bypass tray, depending on what your printer calls it. So we'll go ahead and set up our multi-purpose tray. And we'll do the same test with this Okidata that we did with the Ricoh printer. In other words, how do we load the paper? Print side up or print side down? Again, I drew an X to designate the backing sheet of the page. After reading the owner's manual, unlike the Ricoh unit, this letter size page loads in long grain, not short grain. But let's go ahead and send a print to this page to find out which way we need to load the printer into this multi-purpose tray. Here is the plain sheet that we marked with an X on one side to designate the backing sheet. We loaded it what would be backing sheet face up, but as you can see with this Okidata C830, it actually printed to this side. What this tells me is when it comes to this multi-purpose tray, the paper needs to be loaded print side up. So let's go ahead and load some Neenah Technoprint 4.0 and see if we can get that paper to feed through this particular Okidata printer. Now that we're back at the computer, let's go ahead and work out of CorelDraw X5 print preview screen and send this test file to the Okidata C830. Again, I'm going to go to my print options and I'm going to make sure the Okidata C830 is selected as my designated printer. Once I know my printer is ready to go, I need to go into my printing preferences because we have to make changes. Here, we want to make sure that the size sheet is correct. I'm feeding an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet, so letter size is fine. Next, we need to go to the source. As you can see, the default for this printer is automatic select, which basically means it's going to attempt to pull from the cassette tray first. What we want to do is go into our pull down menu and make sure that we select multi-purpose tray. Now, we need to go into our media weight settings and change the media weight. Because as you can see, this is a printer default setting, which normally means plain paper. Since we are running a coated sheet with an emulsion layer and a backing, we need to select a heavier media weight. What I want to look for when I click on my pull down menu is either a heavy stock, thick stock, or card stock setting. I want to select the first one I see and use that as my first attempt. So since we have a heavy setting right here, I'll go ahead and set this up for heavy paper. Now that I have my changes selected, I'll make sure to apply those changes. And let's send a sheet of Technoprint 4.0 through this Okidata printer. Again, now that our page has exited, the first thing we want to look at is the print quality of our image. From what I can see here, it looks like I have some dropout in my full color test. I also have some dropout here in my gradient. Let's go ahead and apply the tissue to see if the toner is bonding properly. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of toner here on my tissue. What this is telling me is I need to select the next heaviest media weight and try this test again. So let's go back to the computer and select the next heaviest weight. Now that we're back in our OkiData printer properties, last time we tried to run Technoprint 4.0 through in this heavy media weight setting. But since I didn't get good toner adhesion, what I want to do is go back into the weights and select the next heaviest setting. I will keep working down the list until I find a setting where the toner bonds properly and I have a good image. Let's go ahead and try another sheet of Technoprint 4.0 in this Ultra Heavy 1 media weight. Make sure you save your changes and let's send this print through. Again, we want to make sure that the page exits the printer first and foremost. Now we're going to take a look at our print quality. From what I'm seeing here, I'm still getting a little bit of dropout in some of my solid colors here, but not as frequent as it was in the previous media weight mode. Now let's do our tissue test. No toner is coming off on the tissue. This is a good sign. It means we have proper toner bonding. But what we need to do is select the next heaviest weight to try to reduce some of the bubble marks that we see here in the print. We'll go ahead and select the next heaviest weight and try again to see if we can get a better result. Okay. As we could see from this print run in Ultra Heavy 2 mode, I have a solid fill over all my process colors, which is a good sign. Got a good looking clip art and bitmap image and good registration here on my line art. Let's go ahead and do the tissue test just to make absolutely certain. Take our tissue, rub the surface of the print. No toners coming off on the tissue. So what I've determined is when it comes to running Technoprint 4.0 paper through this particular OkiData See A30 printer, I want to set the printer up in Ultra Heavy 2 media weight. If you use these procedures, you can do your own testing on your own color laser printer or copier with our transfer paper products and make sure that you are running the paper through properly. If you have any questions regarding this testing procedure or would like additional information, you can contact us directly at 1-800-826-6332, or you can visit our website at www.condé.com. Also, don't forget to check CondéTV.com for more tutorial videos regarding t-shirt transfer papers. My name's Doug DeWitt, Transfer Paper Product Manager here at Condé Systems. My time is up. I thank you for yours.